Take, for instance, a period of time in which 100 individuals volunteer and are passed through all our screening tests to be eligible for our program. If we take 100 people as an example, due to the intensity of our screening, probably 30 to 40 of those people will be the only ones that might be allowed on tests of using any chemical. The reason being that our psychological, our physical, and our psychiatric profiles on those individuals before they go on tests determines, after intense medical review, whether or not they'll be allowed to be given a drug or not. Now, this has been true. Everyone has been a volunteer, and everyone has signed a volunteer agreement. All that have participated in the Army tests in which you are particularly interested in on the subject of LSD, the entire list of those individuals, plus their volunteer agreement, has gone to the Surgeon General for further contact with the individuals and a study that they will talk about later as far as following those individuals up. We too have done this during the course of our program. Since I'm sure there are so many people that want to talk further and ask questions, I'm going to stop my portion of this at this time and entertain.
Doctor, some men who say they were participants in this program have come forward since the recent stories and said that, I know one called me from Texas, for example, said he didn't know what he was volunteering for. Was it made clear to these people specifically that they were going to be exposed to a drug like LSD and what the effects of that might be on them?
Well, let me answer that, sir, in two ways. For instance, the literature on LSD contained about at least 1,000 references by 1960. Today, it's 4 times that amount. Now, most of this, of course, was done entirely outside in the open, in universities and nonprofit institutes, both here and in other countries. So this is nothing new. One of the things that you do not tell a subject is when they go on any type of drug test is you cannot tell them specifically what that chemical is, and you cannot, for purposes of the test, tell them everything that they might experience, because that is an individual thing. And secondly, you're prejudicing the experiment by leading them into suggestive thoughts about it. And this is what you're getting back from the outside, from the individuals that have been on the test before. They were all told that they were going to undergo a test with a chemical, and that they were told approximately the amount of time, the duration of the test, what the test procedure would consist of, whether they would get it by mouth or otherwise, and were told that it was a drug that might influence their behavior. Yes.
Why, if Frank Olson committed suicide in 1953, did the program with LSD continue until '67?
I can't answer that because I knew nothing about Frank Olson. I knew nothing about his death. I was not acquainted with the man, and so I have no knowledge of it. And you are saying something that I know nothing about, or neither, I doubt very much whether it has been directly related to his ingestion or whatever way he was given LSD. We don't have this as a final answer to Mr. Olson's problem. I am not aware of that.
Can you tell us about the adverse side effects that you noticed in your patients?
Well, let me make it perfectly clear to everyone here. I would not give any individual a drug that I had not already previously experienced myself, whether it was an incapacitating or whether it was a lethal agent, and this has been true throughout the course. Now, every individual that takes a compound has an individualistic reaction to that compound, particularly if it affects his behavior, because some of these compounds are based on the psychological profile of the person, on the psychiatric makeup, on his family history, his relationship in his family history, and also on the setting in which the drug is administered. So if I tell one, it will not be necessarily representative of the next one. These are personal experiences.
Doctor, there have been a lot of figures bandied around about how many volunteers were involved in the drug testing program. Can you give us the official figure?
The official figure that the Army and the news media gave you in relation to the number that had received LSD was 585. And those are the numbers that I've given to General Dirks with the volunteer agreements, with the names of each individual, and we have all of those records. Now, the number of 1,500 in relation to LSD that came out was a result of an estimate, knowing how many we had, of the possibility of some of the people in universities that had been doing drug testing at that time that were not always or necessarily associated with the Army program. And that was an estimate, because some of those people, although there might have been 100 in the program, may have taken it maybe 3 or 4 times, and they may have taken it, and there may have been 3 or 4 simultaneous contracts or grants going on at that particular university. And I have to say that I don't know personally, because all the information we ever received was just a number, because it was not a case report. It was not an individual report, and it wasn't an individual's name, so I can't help you on that. That is one of the problems that General Dirks and General Taylor are facing.
The Army used this 900 figure, and it was clear.
The Army used
It
585.
also used in its answer to queries last Friday night in discussing the university programs under Army contract, a figure of about 900.
Which is
And that was an Army figure.
Which is this what I told you, where they came from?
Well,
The actual number, the
a lot more certain then than it does now.
well, the Army didn't have all of the numbers, didn't have the exact number of people from Edgewood on that at that time. Very simple. They do.
Were there other people tested? Pardon? Were there other people tested with any other kind of hallucinogen during the period?
I like to clear up this little fact of hallucinogens. You know, the press makes a great thing out of hallucinogens. One of the greatest hallucinogenic drugs we have is alcohol, and I'm sure you're fairly well aware of that. And so alcohol is one. Another one that might be on that list would be the barbiturates. They also cause hallucination, but that isn't necessarily their prime effect. So don't call everything hallucinogens, because they aren't.
Were there other psychotropic drugs?
There were other compounds of the atropine nature, like scopolamine, which is a cleared drug and used in medicine, that were tested, yes.
Where were they?
I just told you. Scopolamine-like.
And atropine.
Yeah.
Could you give me the medical use of them?
Pardon?
What are they used for?
The medical use of atropine primarily is used in anesthesia, as an adjunct in anesthesia, primarily to keep the respiratory tract dry during anesthesia. It is also used for nerve gas poisoning, and it is one of the primary ancillary antidotes that every soldier carries. In his respirator bag, he carries 2 milligrams atropine syrettes. Now, scopolamine is a similar type of drug, and it's known commonly as twilight sleep. It's an approved drug. It's used in hospitals. It was commonly used in conjunction with obstetrical anesthesia years ago, in which the person would experience some pain, even if their anesthesia was not full, but they wouldn't remember it. And one of the problems associated with twilight sleep, so-called, and scopolamine, that it was fairly unreliable as to what the person might do. And they did have some hallucinations. They did have some delusions and illusions under these.
Doctor, could you spell out for us exactly why the Army decided to test LSD specifically?
The Army didn't decide to test LSD specifically. The Army decided to test compounds that might incapacitate a single individual, a group of individuals, whether they be civilian or military, which could be given to them by somebody else. And we knew nothing about this class of compounds, what its important was as far as the civilian population, and what its important was as far as military operation. And we were concerned with what the effects were of this class of compounds. So we tested not only LSD, but its analogs and homologs like bromolysergic acid, like
How many of the men who were on this program have been incapacitated, have had ill side effects? You talked about individual differences, but why are you reluctant to talk about the adverse side effects?
I'm not reluctant about it at all. I could talk about my own if I wanted to, but I don't intend to, because I say these are personal experiences with the individual. And most of them, and I'll say this, I have reviewed the record of those people, not those people who have, as a result of all your advertising on the thing, those people who honestly felt that they had some problems in relation to taking LSD. And you know what the total number of that was? Out of 585, 7, in which we have letters. And what did we do about it? We sent a full record to every physician associated with that man, a full explanation of everything that he had, including every bit of his medical records, and we never heard from one of them since. I've never had the second piece of paper from a single individual.
Doctor, were there any civilians involved in, were there any civilians involved in any?
Yes, I'm a civilian.
So there were throughout...
Those civilians who were on the program that felt the same way as I did, that they felt a personal experience would help them in being able to help the individual undergoing their problem, did, but not everyone by any means.
Tell us a little something about the follow-up. You were concerned, obviously, about the effect. How long?
Yes, this is a very popular program, incidentally. We don't pay anybody for this. They're not paid at all. They receive their ration amount. They receive 1 day off every weekend on 4 days of testing, and they get a 3-day pass. They receive no special remuneration except they're paid to and from their station, to and from. And they get a letter of commendation. They get a lot of appreciation from us, and it goes into their 201 file. Then that's all they get.
Doctor, how did I have two questions. First of all, how did the Army obtain its supply of LSD? Did it manufacture it itself, or was there a contract with another corporation?
Yeah.
And secondly, what was the dosage that was given? Was it a standard dosage, or did the dosage vary with each subject?
All right. Anybody who was legitimate investigator, whether they were medical and sometimes, in many cases, psychologists and others in investigative fields, could get LSD by filing an IND or an investigational new drug application with the Food and Drug Administration and with the company which made it. And the company that made it was the originator of it from Dr. Hoffman, 1944, was Sandoz. Sandoz is from Basel, Switzerland, and they have branches all over the world. Everybody bought it from them. We did not supply it to anybody. We bought it from them. We filed a drug application like everybody else did.
Doctor, what about the medical follow-up on these men? Now, the flashback effect of LSD is well known. Were any of these men followed through their careers?
Can I please try and clarify something you're talking about as flashback? You've been hearing this from the popular literature. I'm talking about the experience on well-screened individuals who had before drug intake, careful workups, both psychologically and psychiatrically. That's why we didn't see a lot of these things. What you're talking about is the common talk from the street of youngsters and older people who have taken this without supervision, who were not apt subjects for any kind of drug, let alone LSD, and they may have had them. But let me make it very specific. If you had been drinking or not drinking and were involved in a very violent car accident, you would say that it would be very possible that in the future, and sometime when you were driving down the road, you would have a re-experience if all situations were right in relation to that, right? I mean, isn't that a reasonable sort of thing? Or anything in which your life was threatened in your mind, that you might have it. This is no different than that sort of thing, but it happens primarily in those people who are not of the personality type or the basic type of profile we might call stable. And those are the people we tried to keep off from this sort of program. Now, let me be perfectly clear. Very few of the people that volunteer for our program ever receive drugs. Most of them are on many other type of testing, as I mentioned. Very few of them. And very few of them would qualify to receive drugs. That's because...
People did not know they were getting LSD before they got LSD. Yeah. Did they know afterwards? Were they told afterwards?
This is a very interesting point because, yes, they were. Some of them didn't need to. When Time and Life, and particularly Life, came out with their pictures on it at that time, because of the problem the Army had in relation to this program, it was a classified program, and so we required clearance on the individual, a security clearance. And we never had an incidence like for about a period of time of so many note-carrying, pad-carrying volunteers in our life. And we came to the conclusion that once you told them it was secret, then it was so secret they had to write down everything. So we declassified the whole thing, and it became a lot easier.
When was that?
About 2 years after that period of time, about 1959.
Doctor, how much of the work was done for the...
I declassified the part that they had to have a security clearance to participate in the program.
Doctor,
Oh, you didn't declassify it.
Did not declassify the work.
Classified now?
No, the work has been declassified. It was declassified, all of it was declassified in 1969 and 1970, but some of the reports were not cleared for public release, but they were all declassified.
How much of the work then was done for the Central Intelligence Agency?
None.
How much is done today?
None. Absolutely none to both.
Any intelligence or security agency?
No involvement.
Sir, you didn't answer the question this man asked back here a while ago about whether you had followed up these individuals.
Yes.
What is the...
Yes, we followed up a selected number of cases of these people in groups, and we sent out questionnaires to these individuals about their experiences. Further than that, we interviewed them directly. Psychiatrists interviewed them, and our results were negative. Now, this program has had such good publicity within itself because we don't ask people to come. We merely go around and make the statement. They, having been on the program, go back to their home place, and they're our salesmen.
Did you have any bad cases?
We had none within the Army itself. In our test program,
How many people you tested?
585.
Doctor, how many of the people were followed up?
How about the university?
Of that, a representative sample of that was 10%.
What?
Of the 585.
Reaction is individual.
Individuals.
Does that mean you followed up 10% of the
585?
In other words, we followed up over 50 people on our study.
How many of the university
Now,
people?
you didn't let me finish this. Let me finish it. Because we had officers and enlisted men and everybody in this program, many of the officers were in the Chemical Corps. These officers returned for further assignment to Edgewood very frequently. So we are further familiar with a large number of these people, their personal family histories and their medical histories following that period of time. So the number is really larger than that.
I still don't understand what 10% was something you said to somebody over there. What did you mean?
I gave them a number 585.
Yes.
All right, 10%.